All right, so welcome to the Memberverse podcast. My name is Dave Pancham. I'm the host of this podcast, also the CEO of Pancham. So the purpose of this podcast, we like to sit here and chat with, gym owners, studio owners, consultants, experts, people that are making an impact in this whole fitness space or have been making an impact over time to just share value. Ideally, if you're listening to this, you might be able to get something from this and implement it in your business and have a great impact. Or otherwise, you might just get to know us and maybe want to work with us down the road in case you need any kind of help with marketing or anything that Chris might do. So Chris is my guest today here, somebody I've actually known for quite a bit of time. Chris has actually collaborated with our team in the past. Chris, I'm going to do kind of my best introduction of him, but the simple thing is that Chris has kind of been like the gym turnaround guy. He's been in the space for a very, very long time and has had the privilege of working with some of the biggest franchises in the world and helping to turn around struggling locations through a variety of different strategies. He has tons of experience. So Chris, I'm going to kind of let you, give yourself a better introduction to share a little bit about your experience. So that way, if somebody's listening to this for the first time, they know why they should actually listen to what you're saying.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Dave, and happy to be here. Like you just said, I thought that was a great intro, but more context behind it. I've spent about 20 years in the fitness industry. I started off as a personal trainer in a big box gym back on the East Coast, moved my way into sales, became a manager, managed big box gyms, regional manager, then moved into boutique fitness when that became really, really popular. Spent some time with Orange Theory and they're both on the franchise level, but also on the corporate level. Became a partner in about 8 studios, and we really, really crushed it, and then eventually sold to private equity. So nowadays, I do a little bit of gym turnaround, so helping struggling franchise owners with anything they might need, like lead generation when it comes to, like grassroots type of things, or, sales process, retention, anything like that. So that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So I think like most people that would be watching this, they're going to be somewhere in the group fitness space. And maybe some of them are from franchises, they're independents, but your experience is like super, super vast, right? Especially coming from the big box space. How have you, with 20 years of experience, how have you seen like the industry change and like, what do you feel like is happening now? What do you feel like is the current state of the fitness industry when you look at it now?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I first started, there was no Facebook was around, but you had to have a college ID to log in, right? So Facebook marketing and all that stuff didn't exist. So what did you have to do to get leads? It was all word of mouth, referrals, going out and pounding the pavement. And back then you used to have to wear business casual attire to go out onto the street. So I was in my loafers, literally walking up and down the street saying, "Hey, you want to come in for a free guest pass?" So I learned so much from that, right? Because we didn't have some of the avenues that exist nowadays. And around 08, right, we saw kind of a downturn in the economy, 08, 09, 10. That was kind of the birth of the group fitness era. And also really where Facebook and, Instagram and all these different types of other marketing avenues kind of emerged. And that really just threw gas on the fire. Where am I seeing this going right now? No secret, I think right now is a tough time in the economy, just in the world. I think there's a lot of people struggling with a bunch of different things, whether it be lead generation, or maybe they're struggling to just keep their doors open. And, I put out a podcast episode myself almost a year ago. And I said, look, we're in for it, in this next couple of years, especially going into, 2024, 2025. Only elite operators will survive, right? And what I mean by being elite operators, you have to be all the way well-rounded. So if tomorrow Facebook decides to shut off or it gets hacked or something happens and you don't have leads, what do you do? And what we're seeing now is that, right? The marketing space is still producing leads, but it's probably more expensive. People don't have the discretionary income to join some of these gyms and pay the amount of money that they charge. And so we're seeing some people cancel and there's churn. And so really the strongest people right now are surviving. But yeah, it's been a rough go I would say the last 6 months or so from what I've seen. What about you?
Yeah, I think, I've definitely noticed with our clients, there's definitely a little more churn. One of the biggest indicators that I think we've been seeing for a while is people favoring shorter term commitments, willing to pay more to go month to month rather than have your 6-month contract or your 12-month contract, because they just don't know what the future is actually going to look like. And it's funny when you and I have chatted. It's funny when you look at maybe what's going on in the media versus what we actually think is going on. Why do you feel like we're actually in a recessionary time period versus everything else that's being said out there doesn't feel like that's what the truth actually is?
I think, me personally, I'll just speak for myself personally and what I've experienced. I think right now there's really high interest rates, which, there's not a lot of lending going on. So it's harder to get a loan, harder to maybe like acquire a location. Um, that's tough. A lot of these, startup companies, like if we look at the tech industry, there's so many startups that were just popping up everywhere, like in 2020, 2019, and even before that. And they hired a ton of people, and most of these people got into the tech industry. If you look at the like Austin area, and so of course those people, were doing well. They could afford everything, and then now you look at it. There's massive layoffs. Companies are laying people off. They're tightening budgets. Myself personally, in the company that I'm in now, we're seeing a lot of our customers doing the same. They're just kind of tightening up. They're kind of condensing. They're not spending as much. And if you go around, like, I don't know when the last time you went to the store was, but I just call it like, hey, if we leave the house, we're spending $100 no matter where we go. Like if it's the grocery store, if it's Costco, like it's a minimum. Going out to eat even has just everything's just gotten so much more expensive, at least in my eyes. So call it a recession, call it whatever you want, but I think most of us are kind of feeling the pressure here in this last year of just everything just being more expensive.
It's so funny that you say that. I used to say maybe a year ago I was saying like you walk out the door, it's going to cost you $50.
Yeah,
I guess now it's 100. Well, you are a family man, right? So it costs you a little bit more.
That's right. True that.
But like in spite of everything that's going on, there are businesses that are still crushing it.
Yeah.
I know that from our team. We have just had a stack of like a whole bunch of like client wins where we have a bunch of locations that, their fiscal year basically ends at the end of May. And we have gyms that are, hit 800,000 in the past year, $900,000, $1 million in the past year. So there's definitely locations that are crushing out there. And I'm sure, plenty of locations, operators, probably some private equity people and stuff like that, where their locations are crushing it. What do you think they're doing differently there? And, whether it comes down to the operator, so you mentioned that you have to be an elite operator. What do you feel like is what you're seeing out there is like, this is what the average operator is like, based off of all my experience, what most people look like. And this is what elite looks like. And so it's like, it's usually these couple of areas that are completely lacking that they need to go focus on.
Yeah, totally. So I'd say the first measure of success is using you guys, right? And I'm not just saying that because I'm on your podcast, but I found out about you because of the success that my wife's gym was having, right? And I tell this story all the time, but I was like wondering, hey, how come you're not coming home at the usual time? And she's like, well, I had to stay and close a bunch of people because we've got this new guy named Dave who's just sending all these leads in. So like, if you're not using a service like yours or you're not using Pancham, number one, like you may just be trying to do ads yourself, or you're working with somebody that just is not experienced. So I would say number one, start there. The second thing comes down again to the operator. And so right now times are tough. Before, people were coming and just stapling contracts to your head. Like you couldn't avoid them. They were coming in to just sign up, right? And now the market is just like really, really gotten congested with all these different types of concepts. And even like the same like franchise or gym concept is opening up like a same location like 3 miles away, right? So it's really, really tough. And you have to be like thinking outside the box. So I would say the people that are not doing well right now were the ones that got promised, hey, let me be an absentee owner. I'm going to live like across the country, and I'm just going to hire and visit once in a while. Or they just have this like scarcity mindset of like, I don't think I have to put in the extra effort to go out and get leads or set up events and do all these things. I'm just going to see what like Dave brings in. So on the other side of that, the elite operators hire around their weaknesses, right? So if I'm really bad at social media, I'm going to hire someone that like is crushing it on social media to come in and work at my location, that type of thing. And then they're also recognizing that they have to diversify. They can't just rely on you to produce every single lead that walks in. They have to go out and set up events. They have to go set up partnerships, seek corporate memberships, worry about retention, right? So they have a really good purview of the entire business rather than just putting out fires as they come every single day. So that would be kind of what I see. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to a whole lot of what you basically just said. Not like if I look at, if we look at the top 10 to 20% of owners that we work with and what do they do differently, it's, well, they try to do everything. right? They're out there aggressively in the community, making sure they're meeting the other businesses in their plaza, hosting community events, trying to figure out who's in their customer base, in their member base, and how can they create relationships with maybe the businesses that they're involved in. They're not just taking the hand that they're dealt. They're trying to say, like, what else can I do with the hand that I dealt? How can I go take this hand and get more cards to go play with? And when I look at some of the best locations that we deal with, I would say one of the common trends is that they've at least been able to figure out like how to replicate themselves within their team, or they make sure, so they've been able to develop a good culture within their team. And then, because we always look at, you have locations where it's kind of like absentee owner, and like that location just completely struggles, right? Like we bring people in the door and nothing is happening. They're not converting people, or we hear from them, it's like, we're closing at 15%, or hey, what happened in the last 30 leads? It's like, oh, one person picked up the phone. Like, what is actually happening over here? Versus other locations, when we talk to them, they're sitting there closing like, yeah, our team's closing at 40 to 50% like consistently. So I think there's definitely a key difference between the two, like of what they're able to do in terms of building a team and making sure. I think client experience is obviously extremely, extremely important. And probably the easiest way to measure that number is like, well, what is your retention, right? Because if your retention is good, then everything else under that means that you're probably doing that well. Right. So that's the one side that I see people really doing well. But then the other side is making sure that they're also converting at a high rate. And I think that's where I've been seeing probably the most inconsistency out of the non-elite operators out there.
Yep.
I mean, and sometimes it's just an absence of a sales process, period, or a lack of understanding between, you talk to them at first and they're like, oh, we close 80% of people. Right. But then all of a sudden they start getting leads from like, paid advertising and from these other sources. And their conversion rate is like 15%. What do you think is going on there when you hear that? Because I'm sure you've probably run into that situation when you've worked with some consulting clients before too.
Yeah, like the first one that comes to mind, like when you were just saying that, and it's so true, is that some people aren't even tracking at all. So like they'll be like, oh, we close at like 80%. Cool. Like, where's your spreadsheet? Like, show me what's going on? like where are you tracking, your leads to booked appointments to shows? Doesn't exist, right? So that's problem number one. I would say most people that I come across who are like really not in a good place just don't have an insight on their numbers. They don't know their numbers. That's like the number one thing. And then the second thing is like, if they are absentee owners or they're just not there a lot, they maybe have a regular job. Who's in the studio every single day training your team? Like, how good are they at the sales process, if you even have one? I know for myself, like we train sales every single day. And before you could even take a member, let's say Dave, you signed up, or you signed up for a lead to come into my location. Before anyone can even greet you at the door to take you through our sales process, they needed to pass a test out. So you needed to be so proficient in the sales process that you got tested by me, and you passed, right? You overcame the objections. You asked all the questions. We went through that. And then you have the right to kind of go out and earn commission and do that. So now that's probably like a little bit further than most people would take it, but like I took it very, very seriously because every lead that we are getting is being paid for, right? Like it's expensive, especially nowadays. So I wanted to make everyone count.
So like, walk me through this process a little bit about, I mean, I'm sure someone might hear this process or like, oh, I can't do that, right? Yeah. So like, what's the first grade level of this process, right? And then what's Chris's college level process here?
Are you talking about the test out, or are you talking about just the sales process in general?
Yeah, I would say like the sales process. It's like, how do you, I think what I see people struggle with the most, it's like you come in and you tell them, it's like, oh, wow, they're not doing any of this over here. Let's just take it as sales process. It's like, they're not doing anything right with sales. It's just an order taking process. Yeah. Heck, the gym that I signed up, I went and signed myself up basically. Right. I'm not going to be, you wish every client, every prospect that walked in was like me, but that's not going to be the case.
Right.
And if I were pretend I'm coming into as a consultant to the gym that I actually go to, right, taking Chris's optimal sales process and training, if I tried to give that to them, I don't think they would implement it because it just seemed like so much, right?
Sure.
So what would you like, if you're looking at, it's like, they got nothing going on over here. Like, what would you do to like, say like, all right, like, I don't want to come down like super strict and say, you need to be doing all these things. It's like, how do you, if you walk me through this process a little bit about, how do you, if you, I think what I see people struggle with the most, it's like you come in and you tell them, it's like, oh, wow, they're not doing any of this over here. Let's just take it as sales process. It's like, they're not doing anything right with sales. It's just an order taking process. what are some of the basic things that need to be done that, hey, if they're at least doing this, they'll probably go from a 5% conversion rate to a 20% conversion rate, which is huge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The first easiest one to do, if you don't want to implement anything else I say, the easiest and the only thing you should do is ask for the sale. And that sounds like so stupid, right? But like, you would not believe at how many times someone shows up for a class. Let's say it's 5 a.m. There's no one working at the front desk, or maybe there is, like they opened the location or whatever. The new person walks in, they go, okay, this is going to be your trainer. Have a great time. So they go, they take the class. The trainer gets busy. They have to do like some sort of like meeting with somebody else, or maybe they have to they got caught up in a conversation, or, whatever it might be. That person then walks out the door and no one even asked them to sign up, right? And so now you're playing the catch-up game, reaching out to them. Hey, how'd you like your first class? If you're even doing that. And then their trial expires and you're like, oh, what happened to this person? We don't know anything about them, So number one, ask for the sale. Most people don't do it, or they're too scared. Like a lot of the times when I would go into locations, we would ask the salespeople, what happened on that or whatever. And we recorded most of it, or we would kind of stand by, and the salespeople would go, all right, so how was your class? Oh, it was awesome. Great. So yeah, what do you think? Ready to get started? They're scared to ask. The person literally showed up to the location. They're basically stapling a contract to your head. All you got to do is facilitate it. So that's the number one thing I would say. We can get way more into the weeds on other things you should do, but asking for the sale is number one. And having a person there is essential. There's so many locations that just don't have anyone staffed to actually take on that new person to greet them and sell them. So,
all right. So step one is making sure they're actually asking for the money, right? How do you get over that, that awkwardness? It's it's what do you want to do next? Right. What would you give them? Just hey, say this exact thing, right? What is it? Dummy proof it. How would you dummy proof this here for them?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot easier when you ask them questions beforehand. So I want you to picture this, right? You and your wife are going to remodel your house, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the main aspects of remodeling is going to be the kitchen. So you have a couple ideas. Your wife shows you a Pinterest board, and you guys have picked out some tiles. You have a general idea for what you want to accomplish. So you go to Home Depot, and let's picture in this first scenario, the Home Depot employee walks up to you and goes, all right, so what do you want to do? Oh, I'm remodeling my house. I'm, going to remodel the kitchen first. Great. Kitchen area is over there. Go ahead. Right. So, okay. That's the equivalent of someone walking in your location, to take a class, and you going, cool, there's the workout floor. Have a great class. And then not talking to you. Whereas the good Home Depot employee is going to go, great. So tell me about what you're looking to do. What floors do you guys have picked out? What's your budget? What time frame are you looking to accomplish this in, right? So that all becomes easier. Now I've taken all the information you give me and I can steer you down the road that I want to. And I say, great, these are the tiles that we have, set up. They're within your budget. I think it's a no-brainer. Let's go ahead and get these checked out for you today. Sound good? Right? So the same thing happens in fitness. Hey, your goal is this. This is the time frame you want to do it in. This is your budget. These are the things that have stopped you in the past. They don't exist anymore. Based on everything you told me, I think we should get you in here at least 3 to 4 times a week. That is going to help you accomplish your goal. Let's go ahead and get you signed up today on that XYZ membership. Sound good? Right. So it's really as easy as that. Just listening to people. It's it's basic 101 human psychology. There's all these other things that we can talk about in tricks, but listen to what they're trying to accomplish, steer them down the road. At the end, say, let's get you signed up. Sound good? And that's it.
So just simplifying, as we call it, it's kind of like a discovery process here, or a little bit of a consultation, right? To make it very simple and specific for somebody that's listening to this and wanting to maybe implement this, right? Yeah. What should they make sure that they are accomplishing or asking in that process? How do they know that they've hit all the boxes on the checklist? I'm cool, I did this piece, right? Now I have to go ask for the money after.
Yeah. So we trained most of our reps with a sheet, right? So it had all the questions laid out on it. So whenever you came into our location, we sat you down, we asked you these questions. We made it more conversational, so it wasn't robotic. If you're just looking to do bare bones, right? If you can't sit down with them and it's just not going to be within the realm of possibility, first thing I would ask is, what's your current routine? What are you currently doing now? Second thing is, what are your goals and what's the time frame you'd like to accomplish those in? And then third would be, do you have any sort of restrictions or, medical things that we need to know about? right? Because then we can pass those on to the trainer. The trainer can talk about that during the class. And then, by the way, like this all ties into retention. So when we ask this stuff up front, Dave, if I haven't seen you in like 3 or 4 weeks, I'm going to call you and say, hey, Dave, how's that marathon training? I know you came in here to like, tone up a little bit and you wanted to run that marathon that's coming up in July. How's that progress going? Whereas if I don't know that information, I'm just going to text you and be like, hey, Dave, where you at, man? Like, and you're not going to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're really like putting a dagger in and squeezing. You're like, oh man, I remember that goal that I had.
I mean, that was you telling me, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not chasing you down. I'm just trying to make sure that, you're fulfilling what you came in here to do. So,
and it's so much easier for me to ignore that message when you're like, Dave, where you been? Versus Dave, what happened to that goal you had about like running that marathon? It's like, oh man, I feel like it's so personal and it's like hitting on actually legitimately hitting on an emotion for me right now because that goal might still be there.
100%. Like, to give you an example, I signed up at a gym, and transparently, I haven't gone in a while. I've been working out in my garage, but they sent me like an automated text and it said hello name. Like, so it didn't say Chris, it just said hello name with the brackets around it. And I was like, you guys could care less. Like, this is just, I'm not even going to respond to this. So that's kind of the mindset that most people have.
How do you feel like the world of automation has hurt and helped the gym space?
I think if it's used properly, it can be very powerful. It can lift a lot of heavy rocks for you, especially if you have like not a lot of staff. That said, I think people rely on it way too much. Customers get far too used to it, and it's far easier to ignore general automation. And then it's like the boy who cried wolf. Like that one time that you actually send a real message to somebody, they're so used to the automation that they're just like, oh, this isn't a real person. I'm not going to respond. So yeah, it's kind of two-sided. We didn't really have it when I was running my locations. It was all personal through an iPhone. So it got pretty tedious, but I can see how powerful it is now.
Did you guys literally just like pull up the iPhone, manually text the person when the new lead came in or to check in with them? Like everything was completely manual. Every follow-up, well, obviously a follow-up call is going to be a manual follow-up call. Yeah. We didn't have AI phone calls yet.
Yeah, we had like the big phones that were just basically on the desk. And, I basically put up a sign like on each like little like handheld device that said like, pick me up, I make you money. But yeah, that's what we did. We mainly called that. We were like a calls only type of location. And then when it came to like someone we hadn't heard from in forever, they just were not responsive via phone. That's when we would text them. And we didn't have software back then that could text. And so we would just text from our iPhones, but we had the process down. I mean, we ran things through something we called the Orange Book, which was literally like a phone book that had like spots for each lead and then your last contact and then notes about them. It was very, very manual. So we did things a little bit old school, but it worked for us, Do
you see any, like, I think some of the methods that you've already mentioned about like generating leads are old school, right? Yeah. Like for like any gym that's struggling right now, what are some of the other old school things that you would say, like these should be brought back into your business if you want to start having success?
Yeah. The hunter and the farmer mentality just should come back. So number one, something that we talk about a lot is setting up partnerships in your area, right? So find other businesses in your area that are like symbiotic to what you do, right? So like if you run a gym, you could talk to like doctors who run into people that have like diabetes, right? And they need to get that under control and they need to work out. Well, give that doctor somewhere to refer those people to, right? Or, what's your ideal customer profile? Like, is it women that are ages, 20 to 52, right? Where do they spend most of their time? Where do they shop? Like, those are the types of businesses I would be setting up partnerships with, corporate memberships, and then doing events and tables. And I think a lot of people do those wrong. But yeah, I mean, that's what I mean by that.
Yeah. How do they do them wrong?
Yeah. So like, let's take a race as an example. Let's say you set up at like LA Marathon or something like that. What most people will do is they'll set up like a tent. They'll put up a tablecloth, a couple like weird things that they got from their back room at the gym that just haven't been used in a while, like pens and like these little like coasters or whatever. And then they'll sit back behind the desk with their arms kind of like crossed or in their pockets. And they just pray that someone's going to come up and ask them for information, right? So that would be how I would not run one. You want to basically have people like stop and look at your table and be like, oh my God, I need to come over there. Whether it's like a puppy petting zoo, whether it's a fitness challenge, like a pull-up challenge, whether it's an activity for kids. And anytime someone engages with you, like let's say they come in to like the little puppy area, their parent has to sign, a lead form that basically says, hey, my name is so and so and this is my phone number. It's okay to follow up with me about your location. So we kind of made an event within an event, and we would be out in front of the table pulling people in. Hey, we'd have these crazy suits on, so you kind of have to be like a little cheesy with it. You got to like really get it animated, and if you're not that way, you got to hire people that are.
It's funny because you made me just think about this past weekend, just in our neighborhood, we were walking around, we saw an open house. We're like, oh, let's go check out the open house. First thing they have us do, can you put your information down? The day after, I'm getting a text message and follow up from the real estate agent.
Smart.
So
it's so funny that like most of the things that I've learned in my career have been from other industries that do things really, really well that I've stolen. Like you've been to Vegas. Think about like, okay, it's Friday night or it's Saturday night. You're going to the pool, you walk down the strip. Who's hitting you up as you're walking down the strip?
Probably promoters.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say definitely promoters trying to promote like clubs and stuff like that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
They're trying to pack a party, right? They're trying to make a party. They're trying to get as many people in there as humanly possible. So they're out on the street pulling names. They're going up to, the groups of people. They're getting your contact info. They're exchanging, right? So that's their one job. We can learn a lot about that from in the fitness industry. Hey, we have classes to fill up, right? So we're going to go out into the community and talk to these different people, get them signed up for class, get their information. Like it's the same thing, right? So there's a bunch of different industries that do things really well that I've just literally just copied and applied to mine.
What do you think about, because that makes perfect sense. Like you might like, especially if you're the owner of the gym, you already know it's like, I have a lot of available space. I just need to get bodies in the door over here. I need to get people in. What do you think? I guess the question I have here is, what do you think about like, we've definitely come across owners where they have like a resistance to like giving away things for free, letting somebody come try out the gym for free. It's like, no, I want people to pay. I'm like, but your gym's empty. Right. You should probably be willing to get some people in here.
Yeah.
What do you like? I'm sure you've probably dealt with some of that psychology before when dealing with owners. What is your suggestion there?
Yeah, it's probably on a case by case basis, but I would say like most of these locations now, and I would say almost every boutique gym is giving away the farm, right? So they run like these quarterly like challenges or like 4 weeks for whatever amount of money it might be, but then they're opposed to like discounting something later on. It's like you're doing that anyway. So the name of the game here is to get people exposed to what you're doing and to show them that they can actually achieve what they want to in your location. So if that means giving them something away for free for like a week or whatever it might be, it's like, it's not the biggest deal. Especially like your warmest lead source is going to come from referrals. Something that we did that not a lot of people are into anymore is if you referred somebody to my location, I'm just going to give you a free month. Right? Because there's a 2-month commitment, right? For that person signing up. So I know I'm going to get my money back, and I wouldn't have got this person if you hadn't referred them anyway. So, hey, why not take care of you and just give you a free month? This person comes in, they're at minimum here for 2 months and probably longer if I take care of them and if you stay. So that's kind of the way I think about it, is like opportunity cost. I'm going to give away a little bit more.
That makes so much sense because first off, most of these group fitness studio related stuff, membership is not cheap, right? Whether it's $100, $200 in LA here, a lot of memberships are like $200 plus. And you naturally already, if you've been going there, you probably have told your friends that like, oh, I go to this place, like I've enjoyed it, right? But have you tried to drag them in there and really push them? It's like, you got to come try this out. And if you gave me that little bit of an extra incentive to say you'll get a month for free or half a month off, I'm like, why wouldn't I just drag this person in here? I'm like, you got to come try it out. So, and this is coming from somebody that is also, one side of me is the marketer, the other side of me is the customer, right? So I'm saying this as the customer in me. I'm like, I would totally drag somebody in if they gave me the right incentive. I pull friends that don't even live in the area. I'm like, come try this out. Like, well, I think we could totally do another podcast and talk about a whole bunch of different referral strategies, which I would definitely love to come down and do. But we came to the end here, Chris. And, I'm sure someone that's been watching this may have gotten some good value from watching you and hearing some of your strategies. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you to just talk about like consulting strategies, like anything that you can possibly help them with, what would be the best way to get a hold of you? Yeah, just reach reach out to us, we'll connect you with Chris. We're more than happy to do so. Chris has helped a lot of our clients as well, and coach a lot of our clients and collaborate with us and our team to help our team. So I have nothing good to say about Chris. Nothing but good things to say about Chris. And he has definitely my full endorsement in terms of helping gyms turn around. Chris, thanks so much for your time, man. I look forward to having you again here in the future.